Hello, true duelists. It's YGO Strat's Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history. We're going to be talking about some of the cards that have impacted Yu-Gi-Oh! Throughout the years, and some of the other ones that were stinky bad and no one played them. Today's card is one of the worst cards ever printed in my eyes. I hate this thing, and I won't even pretend to hide it. Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. This piece of shit was first printed in 2006, alongside all of its friends and the other core attributes, and Peasant Rare, ugly old Peasant Rare all the way back in Cyberdark Impact. To date, it only got a single reprint, a regular old rare in Maximum Gold in 2020 as I'm making this video. It's had no other reprints to date, and for time on the ban list, it was Bing chilling at 3 for just shy of 2 decades, right up until the February 2023 ban list, where it was put right from unlimited to banned. And since I'm making this video like a month or two out from that ban list, it's been there ever since, and it can stay there because similar to Artifact Scythe, this game is better without this card in it. Do not at me. A level 4 wind attribute winged beast type monster with 1,000 attack and defense. Its effect reads: neither player can special summon monsters except wind monsters. What a great effect. I'm so glad Konami prints stuff like this. It's the type of card I want to see. I just see it and it makes me say, I love game. I love game. I shouldn't have to tell you why this card is so good. Look at your deck. Now back at me. Now look back at your deck. Your deck is now useless because there's been like 3.5 decks that have been meta relevant that are also wind attribute, and that's out of the 812 decks that have been good in this game's history. Wind is the least used and least powerful attribute in the entirety of the game, arguably including Divine. Okay, not including Divine, but it's second worst. Divine doesn't count. And as such, the Wind Barrier Statue is the strongest because there are so few wind decks. What are you gonna summon the card that only lets me summon dark monsters? Bro, that lock exists in like 12 dark decks already, and they've been meta in spite of it. Dark lock means nothing. As such, this is one of the 3 barrier statues that's actually been annoying in one form or the other over the years, alongside the fire and water ones. So let's talk about the most annoying bird that was killed by the deck of annoying birds. That's fitting. First time this card has a recorded top from what I can find is actually in a Mist Valley deck from 2013. Yeah, in 2013. Ruler spellbook format, and like, we're talking full power baby ruler format. I don't know how this happened. And it's in a list that got top 16 at a Tennessee regional. So it's not a YCS top, but it is a regional top. This showed up in the side deck of the list at the time. It had to be decent solely because the field spell Divine Wind of the Mist Valley, which is still limited at the time I'm making this video, but was at 3 when this list topped, it could just summon this out from the deck at random. From what I can find, he would side into it because the statue was good against certain matchups and could summon it out with the field spell and stun for turns. This is very much the exception to the norm, however, because Mist Valley has never been a consistent meta threat by any stretch, and the deck does not show up again anywhere else in topping events from what I can find, and the statue takes a few years before showing up again. In 2016 is when this card really starts to show up, and it's in one of 2 decks. One strategy that played it was Magispectors, a control-based pendulum deck that used wind spellcaster pendulum monsters as fodder for their spell and trap to disrupt the opponent. The statue was an easy enough fit into the deck. Magispector was a deck that had struggled to get resources for something that plussed as easily as it did, funny enough, needing scales and monsters to really be solid. At this time, a card by the name of Ties of the Brethren had helped to mitigate that somewhat, but an alternative to hinder the opponent while building your own resources was of course with Stormwinds here. Its level 4 fit perfectly with Magispector's scales, and if you had even one Magispector to use with their trap cards to help keep it safe, it could make for an easy win. Barrier Statue was once again more often a side deck than anything else in these decks, but it was a solid one if the player could open the statue and set up a very obnoxious turn 1 board. But this wasn't the only deck to play it in 2016, because the other deck playing it was one that would instead main deck it. So you know it was fun to play against. Barrier Statue Stun is exactly what it sounds like. Barrier statues, moon mirror shields to make them unbeatable in battle, and more traps being played that can possibly be justified to God when trying to get into heaven. This list here shows a fairly standard build for the deck. 2 barrier statues and some fossil dynas, as many solemns as possible at the time, Phantom Knight traps to buff and protect your statues, some copies of Demise to see as many cards as possible, and a Necro Valley, because fuck you specifically. This build does notably lack the moon mirror shields that were often played to equip to the statues, but other than that, you are looking at what I would call a monument to all our sins. Do I need to explain this? Summon the Floodgate on legs, equip it with something so it can't be beaten over in battle, and use traps and some other floodgates of your choice to just totally stop gameplay. Was this a good deck? Not especially. It's possibly the most one-trick deck in existence, and it's very easy to side for it, but that doesn't mean that it can't win. More annoying than good, if you're the type of person to play this, do know that I judge you as a person. That goes double if your name is Nick. You know what you did, Nick. Up to this point, you may notice that every deck playing this that I've shown has been a regional top. That's not bad, but it's no YCS. That's because, with the exception of the easily sided against barrier statue stun, for the most part, decks locking you into wind had to be playing wind, and that wasn't really good for the first 20 or so years of this game. That gets a slight change in 2020 after a few finally decent wind decks, and especially with the release of Simorgh, Bird of Sovereignty. A Link 3 that could summon any winged beast from the deck at the end phase, this card was used for one of the worst things imaginable, to either summon a negate, like Mist Valley Apex Avian, or far more commonly, to summon the statue to stun the opponent completely. It's at this point Stormwinds' winged beast type also becomes pivotal, with decks such as Bird Up being used to link spam and build boards, abusing the Tri-Brigade archetype's cheating out of link monsters, and Lyrilusc's board spam abilities to make some very scary end boards. And with most of all of them ending on the big green bird here to summon out the statue. Whether it was in Bird Up specifically, or a more pure Tri-Brigade focused variant, this was the end board play for a number of players using these decks, right up until Divine Simorgh was banned. And you might hope that that's the end of this card, but actually it gets much worse before it gets better. The night is darkest before the dawn, after all, because after banning Simorgh, we ended up getting the Floowandereeze archetype, the deck with the biggest disparity of cool art to obnoxious ass card effect. An entire deck of winged beast monsters that would use some effect on normal summon, and then normal summon a winged beast. Stormwinds was the easiest fit possible. It's searchable off Rabina, summonable off of any Floowandereeze monster's effect, and even though there are some water monsters in the deck uses additional normal summons to build boards, so the special summon lock is irrelevant. Plus, the deck already uses stun factors, such as M-Pen shutting off of effects of attack position monsters, as well as using Dreaming Town to summon on the opponent's turn, and even a card like Unexplored Winds to tribute not just the opponent's monsters, but cards and things too. A terrible reference. Yes, tributing any back row that you might play against them to summon out a Mega Ryza on your turn. Truly one of the least fun decks to duel against ever, and for a long time they mained Stormwinds to stun the opponent even more. A strategy so effective that Floowandereeze was the only archetype from pre-Power of the Elements to consistently top in the Tier 0 Tier Shizu format. But because it was so good, it also finally got hit on the February 2023 ban list, with Konami banning it like they should have in 2022 when they banned Simorgh. But that's my opinion. Either way, we're free from this bastard, and I am so glad for it. Much like the fire or water attribute statues, this card is nothing but toxic every time it shows up. It was never a card that was seen and appreciated. It was just the extra bit of salt on an already strong end board. Or maybe I'm just a bitter sore loser. You tell me. Either way, overall, Stormwinds was an obnoxiously strong floodgate, shutting out the overwhelming majority of decks from special summoning in a game where not special summoning is just not playing for most decks. Matter of fact, in a game where Royal Oppression and Vanity's Emptiness and other similar cards are seen as brutal and game-ending, Stormwinds was an effective and annoying substitute for them in the modern age, and a card that won't be missed anytime soon. It joins its fellow no special summon floodgates on the ban list as another reminder that including cannot special summon on a card is more often than not a bad idea for the game. Now, I just can't wait until we break Barrier Statue of the Torrent. God damn it. So that'll be our look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Single card history, Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds. Stay tuned for our next video, and feel free to suggest some cards to review or what type of video you'd like to see. Don't forget to like, and as always, subscribe to YGO Strats to impress your smokin' Italian wife, and so you too can be a true duelist.